Hey everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming to the last possible talk of Unreal Fest, like right after that super late party. We expected like 2 people to like wander in kind of exhausted, but it is awesome. So thank you. This is Shoot Your Shot, Cinematic Pipeline Dating Advice. We're here to talk about some new tools that came out in 5.6, some things that will be coming out in 5.7, answer some of your questions that you guys might have about cinematic pipelines in Unreal. First big question, I know you all have, are the glasses necessary? The answer to that question is yes. Why? Because our wife said that they're fun, and mine is actually here, so I'm not going to fight with her about that on stage right now. And who are you? You got some good ones. You got some good questions. So who are we? My name is Kilkenny. I'm a senior technical product manager for Unreal Engine, working on shot and cinematic pipeline tools, as you probably guessed. It'd be weird if it was something else.
And I'm Jeff Douglas. I'm a tools programmer at Epic, and I wrote the cat plugin.
Yeah, so we were the sort of leads on the Cinematic Assembly Toolset, which is a new tool set that's coming out in already came out in Unreal Engine 5.6. It's often also being referred to as cat. So if you see us talking about cat from any point on, this is what we're talking about. It's super convenient that they were giving out these yesterday. Like they planned these for us in particular. Worked out great. But yeah, I want a question for who are you guys, right? How many people here have worked on cinematics in Unreal Engine in some form? Okay, like almost everybody. That's awesome. How many of you guys like work in like film, television, linear content, that kind of thing? Okay, a good group. Game cinematics? Pretty evenly split, actually. Anybody from architecture? Yes, we got some. I was hoping we would get somebody. I know there's a lot more, and if I didn't call out your industry, I'm sorry if I can only do 3 or it gets too long. Question, you don't actually have to answer it. Are you in love with your cinematic pipeline? I hope the answer is no, because if you are, why are you here? Like, go do a good job with your cinematic pipeline you already have. But for those of you who aren't in love with it, Kat can help you with that going forward. We had this character already, like just a big, muscly, buff cat. He's perfect. His name's Meowsles. I didn't make that up. This is official name. So to kind of like start out here, we're going to answer the question, like, what do you mean by a cinematic pipeline, right? It can be kind of vague. For anybody who works in film and TV, we're talking about shot management. That's kind of the term that you'll see there a lot. But we tried to give it like a definition. We came up with this: the tools and workflows that make linear content production feel effortless by handling the mundane data management tasks so artists can stay focused on that creative spark. Thank you for that. That was almost a disaster. No, you're good. Don't worry. But like this is a dating advice talk, right? This is not romantic at all. We want to talk about feelings. So I asked instead this: how do these 2 images make you feel? On the left, we've got like what I think most Unreal Cinematic projects end up looking like. We've got like a bunch of folders. That one's just a new folder. Anim spelled 2 different ways. I know that a bunch of these are in episode 1, but there's an EEP2. I don't know what the heck that is. This is what I find most projects end up looking like. And then on the other side, we've got nice, look at that, episode 2 scenes in a folder structure. The folders are named correctly. We've got an actually correctly named shot. I hope you like that one better. Again, otherwise, I don't know why you're here. This was put really, really well by someone we actually spoke to when we were kind of like going through this process, by this quote right here. Manually using the content browser is the stupidest possible ducking way to deal with shots. I'm going to leave that person anonymous as to who said that, but if you ever see AJ from Magnopus, I think he would theoretically agree with this quote. So we're trying to get away from that kind of feeling, right, and into something that's a little bit more stable, something that's a little bit more refined and easier to work with. So again, linear content workflow that makes it but again, we're talking about making it so that artists can stay focused on their creative spark, getting rid of all of that like mundane, annoying stuff that's super, super easy to mess up. So what we're going to do to kind of show off the new tools that we have coming out is we're going to talk through a purely hypothetical artist's purely hypothetical date with their pipeline, right? Totally made up person, nobody that any of you would know. Oh, that's not supposed to be. That's just a picture of Tim. Okay. Sorry, that was from my like personal collection. I love you, Tim. So let's start with like the beginning of that date, right? We're gonna start getting ready. You want to set up your project in advance so you don't have to worry. You're ready to go. You can start focusing on the things that matter, right? So first problem you might run into, I want to know who I'm going on a date with. Really kind of a good start to any romantic encounter. I want to dynamically name my assets, shots, subsequences, assemblies, folders, all those things. But you have to make a lot of complicated custom tools to do this. And I've seen a lot of people talk in their talks about custom Python tools and custom blueprints and things that they need to kind of go through this process. It's a bit arduous and difficult. My advice is, don't tap the microphone. note 1. My advice solving this, make sure to remember your date's name. That's a good piece of advice to kind of go with right out the gate. If you mess that one up, we're going to have some problems. Really what we're talking about here is we have a new tool set that's out in Unreal Engine 5.6 called naming tokens. This is a new standalone plugin where you can define new tokens in Blueprint, C++, anywhere, and evaluate procedural rules to evaluate them. You can then evaluate those tokens all at once. So you'll pass the entire string through with all the tokens into the subsystem, and we'll return that evaluated out with all the custom rules that you have in place. So you can just kind of do it all at once, not having to do these blueprint replacements every single time. And Jeff's actually going to give you a demo of what that looks like right now.
Thank you, Thomas. So as Thomas said, naming tokens is a new experimental plugin, which you can find in 5.6. If you were at Andrew and Raf's talk on seamless transitions in cinematics a little while ago, I'm going to give the same disclaimer that Andrew gave, which is all the plugins we're going to show you are experimental. So there's a little cruft. Things might break. Things will actually probably definitely break. But we wanted you to get your hands on them. Please give us feedback. We want to make them better. So to show you what we're talking about, we have this very simple editor utility widget. It's got a text field at the top where I can just type some text, and it's going to show you the evaluated results on the bottom. Our naming tokens use curly brace notation, and the text that you put inside the curly braces we refer to as the token key. And there are a number of globally available tokens built into the plugin already. Your common, date time tokens. There's also one for the project name, one for your username. These are case insensitive by default, so I could have typed it with a capital P or all caps just for flexibility. But if you have token keys that differ only in case, we support that too. So if you wanted some different behavior, like have the month capitalized with the first character, you can do it like this. Or if I type 3 capital M's, it'll come out in all caps just to support your naming scheme, the conventions that you establish. You might be wondering, how do we make all this magically work? Let me show you the graph, because it's pretty simple. So this is the graph for the editor utility widget that we were just running. All that I'm doing is I'm taking the text from the top text box, piping it through this one function, and then taking the results and setting the text of the bottom text box. This function is called evaluate token text, and it comes from the new naming tokens engine subsystem. All it's doing is it's parsing that input string, identifying all of those token keys, running some predefined evaluation functions for each one of those keys, and then replacing them in the results that it gives back to you. There are a bunch of other inputs that I'm not going to go into for the sake of time, but we did publish a user guide on our Epic Developer Community website. Please go check it out, read it. It'll go into detail on all of these things. So you might be saying, Jeff and Thomas, we love it. We can't get enough. I want to make my own tokens. How do I do it? Let me show you. So if you go to the miscellaneous submenu, you will find a new naming tokens object. It's a blueprint, and here's where you can add whatever tokens you want. So I'm just going to name mine demo tokens and open that up. The first thing that you're going to want to do in the class defaults is set a namespace. All of the tokens that you add to this are going to be scoped to that namespace to help avoid clashes in the key names. So like if I wanted to have my own project token, I didn't want it to clash with that global project token, the namespace is how I would differentiate between those. So let's just call our namespace demo, and then I could add my first token. I need to give it a key, so name mine UEFest, and then a function that's going to evaluate whenever that key is found. So I click the little plus button, I get a nice little graph. The function, if you'll notice, has no inputs and has a single output, which is just a text field. And you could put whatever complex logic you need in here with your variables or context objects or whatever to actually do the evaluation depending on your system. But first, for the sake of time, I'm just going to return a text literal. Just have it say UEFest Orlando. I compile that and then go back to our widget. I can now type that I just created. Here's my namespace demo, then the colon key, and then UEFest, and you'll see that it evaluates like so. So
So any tool that supports that evaluation will support any token that you make in that blueprint right out the gate. One node to make the token, one node to evaluate it, that's it.
So there are a few tools that in 5.6 we've added support to, which some will show you later on in the presentation. One that I'll show you really quick right now is Take Recorder. So if I go open up Take Recorder, traditionally Take Recorder has supported tokens. If you've ever used it, you know that like it uses it for take names and directory names and certain track names. But we've updated it in 5.6 to use the new naming token subsystem. And we've also added a cool new feature, I think it's cool, where you can add, as a user, you can add your own tokens dynamically. So for example, if you ever use Take Recorder, you know the default take name is slate_take. But in our project, we don't really talk about slates, we talk about scenes. So it'd be really great if I had a scene token that I could use everywhere, but Take Recorder doesn't have one. So if I come over here to the take saver and I just replace the slate token here with scene, notice that the UI has updated up here with a blank text field. So there's now a new token that doesn't have any value to return. So let's just say that I was going to be shooting out here. Maybe I'm going to do a nice forest scene, so I'll just call this forest.
The world's smallest forest of 7 trees.
You'll see here's a preview of what the take name is going to be, so it's already evaluating that token. And just to bring that full circle, I go do the editor utility widget again. I can type TR, which is the Take Recorder namespace, followed by scene, and it evaluates there as well. So kind of the main benefits, you can build these potentially long strings with tokens from multiple different namespaces potentially.
We crashed the GPU.
I didn't even touch anything.
I don't even know how you did. Jeff, that was honestly impressive. I know there were some guys from NVIDIA here. If any of you are here, what's up with that? But anyway, we'll go back to the slides while Jeff kind of, I guess, reboots the project. Actually, you do need to click into the slide deck for me to be able to keep going. So we'll figure that out. Anyway, well, that was naming tokens. It does not normally crash the GPU. I don't actually even know how that's possible, but that's kind of cool. So we'll move on to the next issue that we're kind of trying to solve with the cat tools, which is I want to pick the perfect date spot, back to the dating advice here again, or I want to pre-populate my folder hierarchy so I know where I'm supposed to save my work. Let's avoid that like nasty folder structure that we saw at the beginning with 2 anim folders and a new folder and like all this stuff in the way. So we have some advice. Pick the spot in advance. Don't wing it. Reservations can get hard to get depending on what city you live in. We live in Los Angeles. It's nearly impossible. Or directory placeholders. This is another new standalone plugin that exists as sort of a part of the larger suite. You don't need to be using Cinematic Assembly tools for naming tokens or for this. You can use them on their own. And this is a kind of really simple thing that it does here. It is a new asset that is created automatically when the plugin's enabled inside of your empty folder that just holds the space of that folder. So you can check that dang thing into Perforce without having to like make up that like empty blueprint, delete me strategy that everyone seems to be using. They're hidden by default, so you don't actually have to like, you don't actually have to see them in the content browser. They're invisible, kind of like redirectors if you play around with like the show redirectors. There's an option to show them. And there's an ability to automatically clean them up as you go. So if you delete a folder, it'll delete with it. There's no having to deal with that. And you can also run a cleanup procedure on it to say, hey, if we found folders that no longer need it, there's enough stuff in the content tree to hold that folder, we'll get rid of that for you. It is 10 kilobytes in size. It's like depending on your project, you may not care to delete it, but you might if you're really squeezing it out. So that's now available as its own standalone thing. Next problem, I want to look cute. I think we did it pretty well today, personally. But I have a lot of options that I need to configure, and I don't know which ones they are or where they are. I also call this the project settings is scary problem, and I firmly stand by that. This thing is a terrifying monstrosity half the time. You have a lot of settings that you need to kind of configure for giving up in your show. What's your production FPS? What's your folder hierarchy? What's your source control settings? What are tokens are available? Now that tokens are available. What are your sequencer settings? What is your hierarchical bias? Or any number of forever increasing settings that we just need to kind of keep going. And we're definitely making more work for you guys by adding more settings. So this all this shot management stuff. We also have one more. I want to run multiple different cinematic projects out of one U project, and they each need to have their own set of settings. Some inside baseball, that's how Fortnite cinematics works. And it's why whenever I need to download, it's 4 terabytes to download that project on the original side. So we need to solve that problem both for us, because we're going crazy, and for you guys. So we have another new setting here. Have your friend help you pick out the right outfit. And your new friend here, the production setup wizard. So this is a single panel that you can load up from the Windows Cinematics production setup wizard. It groups a bunch of critical settings together in one place, like what your sequencer settings are, a bunch of ones that we'll show you. You can create multiple different productions and swap which one is active at any given time. So whenever you swap the production, all those settings will swap to match the current one that you're doing. So you're doing some different settings for gameplay, maybe then you're going to render out a trailer, you want a different set of settings for that. You can dynamically swap that without like dealing with a bunch of INI shuffling around and all that kind of stuff. And it's a common place for a bunch of future tools to add things into. So you're going to see a version that's a little bit light. In coming releases, more and more tools are going to be kind of grouping their stuff into there, and more capability will be in there. But to start, there's a couple of things like sequencer settings, asset naming, naming tokens, folder hierarchy, all that stuff. I'm going to give Jeff a second to get the project back up.
Yeah, riff for 1 sec. Let me just reopen it. All right, so Thomas said up here in the Cinematics Production Wizard, let me walk you through what's in here. So the first tab is revision control. This is just a reminder and an encouragement that if you're going to use revision control, now would be a really good time to set it up, because all of the settings that you're going to save are going to be saved to your default engine INI file. And the benefit is that one person will set all this up, push it to everybody on the project, and now everybody has the same production settings. So
somebody yelled out one time in this, yes, get producers to use the engine. This is the attempt at that.
Next tab is productions. This is where you'll see the list of the available productions that are in this particular U project. You can create new productions. You can also import existing ones. If you have one from another project that you just want to use the same settings, you can export it to a JSON file and import it here. I'm going to go ahead and make one that we can configure, call it demo production, because I'm really good at naming things. You'll notice this little green check mark next to it. This indicates that this is now my active production. So I mentioned you could have multiple different productions in one project. They could all have different settings, but only one of them is going to be active at a time, which means that you can have different users or different teams all working in the same project, but you having a different user setting for their active production, they can have different production settings without stomping all over each other's work.
Yeah, we're calling these productions for like, different shows running out, but you can easily use this also for the lighting team has one set of settings they want, the animation team has a different set of settings, individual users. It's just a quick way to swap between them.
Next up are just a few sequencer settings that we've started to pull together into one location. My fun fact is that all 3 of these, if you tried to find them in project settings, are in different sections. And actually, the last one you can't even find in project settings. You have to know the correct INI file to go to and actually write the correct thing in there.
Because project settings is scary.
You'll notice the active production up here is set to demo production, so we are actually setting the production settings for that. The ones that we've included for now are the default display rates for new level sequences, the default start frame, and the subsequence priority, which is also called the hierarchical bias or H bias, which if you've ever used subsequences, which I'm sure you all have, you'll know that the default in Unreal is that subsequences will override parent sequences. That's bottom up, but you can easily swap that to top down, and then you'll have the inverse for all new level sequences that you create.
And this version is for if you want to do things like lay out a bunch of different shots into one scene and then do overrides in that top parent level, not on the individual lower levels. You kind of have the option to go which way you want to work.
So I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to set my default display rate because I'm going to make The Hobbit.
Always classic cinematic 48 FPS.
I'm making The Hobbit, man. And then just for fun, I'm going to set my start frame to -48 because I can.
The always classic negative start frame.
And then I'm going to go make a new level sequence. I'm going to open that up in Sequencer, and you'll see that my display rate is set to 48 by default. I'm at frame -48. And if I went and made a subsequence track and made some subsequences, you could see that the H bias is set appropriately. Next up is our old friend, the naming tokens. The top part here is just a reference of all those global tokens that we looked at a minute ago. And on the bottom, you will see the available namespaces. So here's the take recorder one. And here is actually that scene token that we added earlier. When I practiced this, the demo one is here too, but since the engine crashed, it didn't actually save my blueprints, but all the ones that you create in blueprints would show up here as well. The asset naming tab. So who here likes to establish naming conventions for different asset types in their project? You're probably familiar with the default behavior. If I go make a new level, it's going to be called New World by default. And I've seen many of you in many of your presentations have things where you start typing like LVL underscore and then start going from there. So if I want to just establish that as a convention in my project, I can click this button, select the appropriate class. The one for levels is actually called World. And then I can just say I want these to be called LVL underscore. And then I'm actually going to use a built-in token here for the active production name, if I can spell. And an underscore. And now if I go make another new level, you will see that by default, the name is LVL underscore demo production. And then if I just hit right on the arrow, I can keep typing and I can have a default name that way. And these are just guidelines. Like I could delete this and still name it whatever I want. But
There are plans for later on to do some more data validation so you can actually ensure that these are being used. But for now, this is a guideline to help artists make sure that they know what they're supposed to use at the very least. If they decide to erase it and call it ASTF, they are allowed to do that so far.
yeah. And the last one is the folder hierarchy. So this gives you a chance, probably at the start of a production, to just create a bunch of default folders so that when your artists get in there, they know where to start placing all their assets. The root here is just your project content root. And I'm going to show you a trick that I like. And I'm going to make actually a top level folder here that also uses that active production token. And then make a couple more below that. So we'll do like environments and blueprints. And if I go click this create template folder button, and if you kind of watch the content browser over here, you will see I now have a folder named demo production because it evaluated that token. And then underneath there, I have my folders. And Thomas mentioned that we have these directory placeholders in there. They are hidden by default. Looks like an empty folder, but if I go turn on this advanced filter, you'll see that they're actually in there.
So you can check these in so the artist can start working without having to pre-populate content. Just give them the folder structure. Now they know not to make another anim folder spelled slightly differently the first time that they go to put something in there.
Let me show you one more quick thing before I pass it to Thomas, and I'm going to import a production that he made earlier.
So all of these are importable and exportable. So you can make it one time in a project, and if you're reusing the same folder structure, just pass it to the next, create, create, create. You don't need to redo it every single time.
I'm going to set cat to be my active production and kind of just flip through and see what Thomas had set up for this project. He's got a bunch more naming conventions he'd set up and a much more extensive default structure. And since he's also using this cool active production folder trick, I literally don't have to type anything. I could just click the create template folder button, and I now have another project folder here with all of my things already set up, ready to go, ready to check in. Artists are ready to start putting stuff in.
Sweet. All right. Done with that? All right, so that's your project all set up now. You've got your naming conventions in place, you've got your tokens set up, you've got all your folders and all those things in place. Your artists hopefully know what they're supposed to name things, where they're supposed to put them, the settings are right, no one's gonna decide that's a 30 FPS show for some reason on one sequence and one sequence alone. So, we're ready for our date now. I wanna feel confident working on the shots in cinematics. So we're gonna get into that like real shot management stuff now. First problem, I wanna have real conversations, hopefully. And by that I mean I want to make some complex cinematics, but I have to repeat every single step to create folders, subsequences, sequences folders every single time. This is that I have 40 subsequences I need in 10 folders grouped in a certain way, and I keep having to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Our advice, be prepared with some topics in advance if you're a little bit nervous about what you want to talk about on that date. And by that I mean we have a new tool. This one's now called the Cinematic Assembly Schema. So this is another thing that came out with the Cinematic Assembly tools in 5.6. What it allows you to do is create all the cinematic types that you need. So think of these schemas as like different types: shots, scenes, takes, episodes, lighting subsequence, any kind of like little beat of linear content that has a timeline-y thing that you want to represent, and that might have its own template around it. Each schema is a unique template for subsequences, naming, and folder hierarchy. And it also allows you to create custom metadata that you can, as a user, interact with, set, and then access through your pipeline tools. Those are then used to the next spot, which is when you do have those conversations, listen and respond to those conversations. People like when you actually sound like you're listening. You guys seem like you're listening, so I really appreciate that. By that, we have the kind of next piece down, the cinematic assembly itself. So the cinematic assembly schemas are the templates for defining each of these individual types of shots and scenes and everything. The cinematic assembly are the actual representations of those inside of Unreal. So they kind of play a double role, where they are on one side, they're a level sequence. And I mean, they literally are a level sequence. They're a child of level sequence. You click them, they'll open up level sequence, and they have a timeline. But they're also sort of like a pipeline entity on their own also. They represent the shot, the scene, the take, the episode inside of the engine that you might have mirrored off in whatever production management tool you're using. They will automatically create subsequences and folder hierarchies that you've defined for them in advance. So whenever you create that scene, we're going to populate all those pieces. Jeff will show it much better than I can describe it in words in just a minute. It opens the assigned level that it goes with, so you don't have to remember which one it is. I heard this really common complaint a lot, which is, I know I have to work on a shot, but I have no idea what level it goes in, and I have to keep clicking on things and finding which one my bindings isn't broken in because I don't know what level it's supposed to go with. It knows, it will open it for you, a little bit more FBXy like that. You can just click, jump in, and you're ready to go. And it also holds all of that schema and metadata that you will need in your pipeline. So again, we'll show all that, but you can kind of see it already over there on the left. What level is it? What's its parent assembly? What production does it belong with? What's its shot number? All of this is queryable, and this is all user configurable. And just for some fun, you can also take notes on it. So it's a good spot that you can like add a little bit of coordinator notes type things that you can store directly in the engine and access with your tools.
All right, let's see how we can make some cinematic assemblies. These are going to be found under the cinematics submenu. You can make cine assemblies or schemas. I'm actually going to show you assembly first. You'll notice on the left here is an asset picker where you can pick from the available schemas in your project. For now, we're going to leave it on no schema and just show you what you get with just a vanilla assembly. As Thomas mentioned, you can pick a level. I'm going to go ahead and it defaults to your currently open level when you open the tool. But just so I can demonstrate it, I'm going to swap it to a different one so we can demo that in a minute. You could set its parent assembly, which is just its parent sequence if it had one that was relevant.
Yeah, think about this like what scene is my shot in, that kind of very simple metadata hierarchy.
And then it defaults to the active production that you currently have set, but you could pick from the available productions if you want that association as well. You can associate specific pieces of instance metadata. These are just string key value pairs, but if there's one particular like a pipeline asset that you need that you know you want to tag it with, you can add that here. This hierarchy tab is not super interesting yet until we get to schema, so I'm going to skip over it. And as Thomas mentioned, you can have a place to take notes. These are editable later, but I'm just going to take some quick ones. I'm going to say, hi, honey. Yes, I wore the glasses. Because she'll watch the recording.
Is she spying on our project, able to read that? How's she going to find that?
I haven't named it yet, so let me just give this one a quick name and click Create Assembly. I didn't really call attention to it, but when we opened that window, no asset was created by default. Like it opened this nice config window, you could configure everything that you wanted, and when we closed it, it just named it the thing that I wanted. So just to show you, if I open this, remember we associate it with the empty level. So two things are going to happen. It's asking me if I want to save my current level. I'll say sure. It then opened empty level in the level editor, and it opened demo assembly in sequencer. So that's pretty nice. You'll also notice if I hover over it, some content browser got a couple like nice UX things in 5.6, so this is one of them. The notes that we took right there are written there as the user description. So just at a glance, if you've got a bunch of these in a folder, you can just hover over it and see the kind of beginning of your notes. Okay, let's go ahead and make a schema and show you what that looks like. Similar thing, it's going to open this config window where you can set stuff up first before ever actually making the asset. You're going to want to give it a name. I'm just going to call this one demo schema. But the name is really important because this is going to kind of define your type. So you might call it your shot or your scene or your whatever entity you need it to be. You can give it a little description like a cool schema for cool people. And you could define a default assembly name. So again, a naming convention, anytime you make an assembly from one of these schemas, I'm going to keep this one simple and just use a token that's also built in called schema. So that'll get replaced with the name of the schema when you choose that. You could pick a parent schema. So Thomas mentioned like when you set the parent assembly, you could say this shot belongs in this scene. This is a way that you could restrict that asset picker to say, okay, well, I only want this one to let me pick scenes, for example, so I don't mess that up.
So shots aren't, you can say in your pipeline, a shot's not a child of a shot. It only meant to go to scenes. You don't have to sift through that giant list of every possible one, just the scenes that make sense.
And then just for fun, just to help differentiate between these things, you can give it a custom thumbnail. I actually kind of like the UE4 logo as a little throwback, so I'm going to pick that. Over here on this metadata tab, this is where you can define different metadata properties that you want all assemblies built from the schema to have. So if I add one, you can see there's a few different types that we added support for. So for example, if I wanted an integer property called shotnum, I could do that and have it default to 1,000. And then I could add another one, which is a bool. And I'll just call this one like is exterior. If I care if this is an exterior shot, I could set that to true. I might as well default that to true as well. We'll come back to this in a minute when we make an assembly from this. So just keep these two properties in your head. And then the content hierarchy. So here's where, as Thomas mentioned, we can associate default subsequences that we always want to have created when we make an assembly from the schema. Over here is a content tree showing you how those are going to be organized. You're always going to have this one particular asset that uses the assembly name token. This represents the top level one that you're creating. But if I want to make a subsequence, I'd probably do this, name it after the assembly with that token, and then I'll make one called like FX, and then maybe I also want one for lighting, drag those over here. And now anytime I make one of these assemblies, I'm also going to get 2 sub-sequences with it. But I could be a little bit more organized than this, I think. So if I add a sub-assemblies folder, I can then drag these into here. And actually, I want to be one step more organized. And I'm going to make a folder that's going to actually be named exactly the same thing as that assembly and stick all of this in that. So let's create this schema and show you what happens if we try to make an assembly from it. So now we're going to pick demo schema as we're creating this new assembly. And you'll notice a few things changed over here. We get a little description of what the schema is with the thumbnail. We have this new section over here in the details panel for the demo schema metadata. We have an integer property called shotnum, defaults to 1,000, a bool checkbox here, so we could change these to whatever we want. And a list of these subsequences here using those names. If I go to the hierarchy, you'll also see it's going to show me all of the extra subsequence assets that we're going to make. This was just kind of a simple demo. We have shipped 2 default schemas with the plugin in 5.6, the Unreal Scene and the Unreal Shot. Feel free to use them. We set them up to be somewhat appropriate. Use them as a reference to make your own, whatever you want, but these are in the plugin content. And I want to show you how to make those. I'm going to actually go to my production folders that I made earlier because
luckily Geoffrey knows where to put his stuff.
What?
I said, luckily you already know where to put your stuff because it's right there.
I'm going to go into my scenes and let me hide that. I'm going to go make a Cine assembly. I'm going to make an Unreal Scene. This one doesn't have any special metadata or anything. I'm going to actually reassociate this with hillside because I want to go back to the prettier landscape later. And then I'm going to give this one a name. We'll just call this one forest. It'll be our forest scene that we were talking about and create that. Notice that this one was set up using that assembly name folder. So it got placed into its own special folder. It has a sub-assemblies folder, a shots folder, and an anim folder. These are all empty by default, but it's where you could start putting stuff. So I'm going to make a couple shots. So go into its shots folder, go make another assembly. This time I'll choose Unreal Shot. And you'll notice we got some nice metadata over here for the shot num like we showed. I'm going to go ahead and set its parent assembly to be that forest scene so that we stay organized. I'm going to also say that this one's going to go to hillside. Change the shot num to be, let's just start with 1010. And notice as I'm doing this, these names are updating. And that's because, if I click into this text box, this is a default assembly name built from tokens. This is a kind of a cool new slate widget that we have in 5.6. It's not exposed to UMG yet, but we have plans to make that available for your own editor utility widgets and your own tools. But when it's focused, it shows me what the token string is, and when it's unfocused, it shows me the evaluated one. Same with these. These are all named after the assembly with their appropriate suffixes. And I can go ahead and just say create. Now I have a nice folder with the thing. My sub-assemblies are all in there. And if I open this one in Sequencer, remember it's going to open my level properly, so I'm back in Hillside. And here are a bunch of just empty subsequence tracks that are already there. They're set to the appropriate production settings, right? We had our start frame at 1,000. So that was what Thomas had set up. And they're here ready for you to go. I was talking through that, so it felt slow. Let me go ahead and make another shot, and I'll show you just how fast that is. Go make an assembly. Go make a shot. Parent assembly is forest. This is shot 1020. Create. New folder. New shot. More sub-assemblies. I don't know if you can see it from down there, but the little tile right here, the name of it says Unreal Shot, and the thumbnail is actually matching the thumbnail from the schema, again, just to help you stay organized.
You essentially have your own little like half of an asset thing here, and it's got its own custom icon, its own custom label, and you can search for those names and it will show up like it was an asset called that in the first place.
And just to bring this full circle, let me go ahead and add a shot track, and I will go ahead and add shot 1010 and shot 1020 and move this over here. And pretty much you're ready to go. Have your artist go in there and start working on their first shots.
Yeah. I promised Jeff we'd make shot management fun.
We mentioned that they're just like level sequences, so you could also record into them using Take Recorder. We've added a couple extra settings to the Take Recorder settings. A target record class, so you could choose between base level sequence or Cine assemblies, and an assembly schema. So let me show you, I can just quickly record another Unreal shot. I'm just gonna drag any asset into here just so I can start recording it. Name this one my scene and start recording. Notice that as it goes, it has those default subsequences here already going. They're going to be the same length as the recording. If I stop that and go preview that recording, you'll see I've got my normal actor track here, what I recorded, and again, the subsequences that we wanted to have made. Now, this is all kind of manual, people working in the editor. I know a lot of you like to script all the stuff in your pipeline. So you can also do a lot of this via blueprints and Python. And I want to show you that real quick. Going to make another quick editor utility blueprint. Just make an object, open that up. I'm going to bind this to run so we can demo it in a minute and show you the create assembly function that comes from the Cine Assembly tools. With this node, you can do exactly what you could do in that nice configuration window, but do it in a scriptable way. So I'm going to go ahead and select my schema. I'll make another shot, pick my level, pick my parent assembly, and we're going to use the default name from the schema so that it uses that parent underscore shot num naming convention. But because we don't have the window open, I don't have like a box here for me to type that into. So I have to just make a map of metadata and add it here. So I know that my key was named shot num. I'm going to give this one the value of 1030 because we already made 1010 and 1020. Let's make another one. And then last, I don't need to give it a name because we're going to use the default name, but I do need to say where we're going to put it. And it's just, what was our shots folder? So we say organized. I'm going to take this, put that into the path here. Cool. One other function I'm going to show you real quick is that this is going to return you an object reference to your new Cine assembly that you just created. And there's a bunch of metadata functions that you can play with as well. So I'm going to set metadata as string and actually add a new key here. I'm just going to name it thanks, and then give it a value of for watching, because that's cute. And I'll show you that result in a minute. So let me compile, close that, and go run our thing. Notice it refocused me to the correct folder where I just made the thing so I could see it. Now I have shot 1030 set up exactly the same way with all the same naming conventions, all the same default subsequences, just done via blueprint instead. And now last thing, let me just show you some Python. If I typed these earlier so you didn't have to sit here and watch me type. If I go and I load that asset, that shot 1030 that we just made, I can go kind of inspect it a little bit. So there's a function called get full metadata string, and this will give me a JSON representation of the metadata in there. So here's my shot num, the value of 1030, and here's that other thing we added, thanks for watching. I can, if I want to query for a particular value that I know is in there, I can do that as well. So let me get metadata as integer, and I want to get the value of shot num, and that's going to give me the integer value 1030. And then I can also edit. So if I do set metadata as string, I'll give it the same key, thanks, and it's going to overwrite the value of that particular property. And then if I just get the full metadata string again, you can see now it says thanks again. And that's pretty much it for me.
That's pretty much from you.
Back to you, Thomas.
Great job, Jeff. So yeah. Jeff does all the hard work. He made me look really good for this. But yeah, so what you're looking at the end there is basically you can automate this stuff from your production tools. You can read right in and out. You can create them from your shot manifests. Unreal Engine is playing a lot nicer than it used to with all the production tools that you may have out there already. All right, so some more advice. Try these conversation starters. If you don't want to build out your own schemas and you don't want to build out your own pipeline, or you want to have some place to start, again, the Unreal Scene and Unreal Shot are available right now in 5.6. And over time, we'll be adding some more. Looking forward to 5.7, there'll be a take one, for example, that works nicely with Take Recorder to help you get some good pipeline stuff going on there. Again, just quick, here's kind of an overview of what they look like, but you saw them from Jeff. Okay, so there you go. You now have your project set up. You've done your shot management setup. You've got some shots being created. Artists are working. But last kind of key piece here, I want to get a second date. I don't want this to fail out in the end. So by that I mean I want this to actually work from the whole pipeline from start to finish, right? This isn't just about a tiny little sliver. It has to carry all the way through or it's not really going to work out for anybody. So be consistent about this. CAT is supported throughout the entire pipeline. So Take Recorder and Mocap Manager, if you saw Richard Graham's talk, are getting developments there. Right now, Take Recorder can record into the assemblies and can use the tokens for its naming and custom fields. Mocap Manager has support for tokens, with support for recording into assemblies coming a little later. Virtual Camera can record cameras into assemblies, can watch them in review mode, treats them like level sequences as it does normally. Sequencer, you can create and edit them. They are level sequences. Sequencer doesn't even know it's any different, so you won't notice any real difference in feelings there. And Movie Render Queue is actually able to render them. So when you go to pick out your sequences, you can choose your Cine assembly, set it to render, and it will also pre-populate the level that you want to render from the metadata that was inside of that. And there's more development coming with the integration of Movie Render Queue in the future as well. All this is out now in Unreal Engine 5.6, so you can go and try it right away today. Well, probably not today, it's a little late. I hope you probably go to something a little more fun. But I know what you're thinking. You guys love it. It's amazing. We agree. We like it a lot. Thank you for that. That was very nice of all of you to say so enthusiastically. But there's a little bit more. We want a strong, future-looking relationship, right? Date 1 went great. Date 2 went great. Let's have a good relationship. Let's keep it strong. And let's look at what's going on in 5.7 and beyond. So first, timeline templates. So we showed you can create those subsequences. You can create those folders. Right now, they're just placed right in at the front, and they're as long as the sequence is. In 5.7, we're going to be looking to add in templatization of the timeline itself. What default lights do you want? What default folders do you want? Are there any default actors or cameras you want? So you can really get those sequences ready for someone to just dive in and start working. Assembly database. So right now, Jeff showed you the Python. You're able to kind of query individual assemblies for their metadata, make adjustments. This is going to be not like a full, Autodesk type, shotgun style database, but at least something that you can query with directly, that you can query metadata off of shots, make larger queries about give me all of the shots that are in a specific scene, make adjustments from there, a more centralized place that you can access and work with for larger pipeline integration. Assembly duplication. If you ever tried to duplicate a level sequence that's really large and complicated, it has like 5, 6 subsequences and subsequences in there and folders and things. It can be really easy to duplicate, forget to change one. You have one subsequence left, someone tweaks lighting, it changes 7 shots back lighting, that's where it came from, and it's cross-referenced. So this instead will allow you to duplicate them safely, choose if you want certain sequences to duplicate or remain linked, and then we'll use tokens to completely rename them, put them in the right folder, organize them, and you can safely ready to go and start working it down there. And lastly, you got to end your toxic relationship with the content browser, all right? Stop calling your ex. We're going to have an assembly browser instead, so there's no more having to use the content browser for this manual navigation and sifting through of your shots and scenes and cinematics.
If anybody who works on content browser watches this in the future, we love content browser.
It's true.
It's me, it's not you, okay?
Content browser is awesome, just not for this particular thing. So this is where I would have put mocks, and I didn't get them ready in time for this. So just imagine like a really good looking browser over there on the side. No more content browser. You can view your assemblies in their actual hierarchy, episode, scene, shot, sub-assemblies, and navigate and work through it in that way. Create and duplicate shots directly in there, add sub-sequences directly in there, edit metadata and shots. Kickoff render is sort of a centralized place to go. You really shouldn't, at that point anymore, need to be using the content browser to deal with the assemblies themselves. Obviously, if you're going to grab other assets, content browser is wonderful. But it's not what you're going to need to be doing going forward. That's kind of our ultimate goal, is to give you that centralized place to work in a nice, clean way. And that's it. That's our talk. Thank you, guys.